I've seen this tendency on the part of a number of SRTUs that, okay, you can have one more row and provide for about 5 more passengers to make it economical. But if that one more row is going to make the entry and exit to the seats uncomfortable for the passengers, I think it's not a good economics when you work it out in terms of providing for 5 more passengers. Next issue, I would also like to draw your attention to the ticketing system, availability of tickets. As a matter of fact, for certain premium services, many SRTUs have already started online booking, and that facility is already available. At some of the leading bus stations, I believe, digital systems are also being used, but at the national level now, there is a call, and I don't know where from this target came, but we have been given a target, the Ministry of Road Transport has been given a target of close to 565 crore transactions, digital transactions in terms of payments. And the expectation is that all the passenger tickets now should be encouraged to be purchased and sold using the digital means. I'm sure I would draw the attention of all the SRTU representatives here to look at the possibility of adoption of digital system of payments in terms of sale, purchase of bus tickets as well. In any case, it is going to add to the convenience of the passengers. SRTUs are facing a huge number of challenges by themselves, and there is a huge resistance in introduction of private participation in the public transport system in the state. At least that's the cue I take from my state, where the union of drivers and conductors in the SRTU is so strong. They use the word immediately chakka jam, and then it leads to a chakka jam across number of states. I fail to understand, as long as the government, the SRTU says, look, today I have a fleet of 4,000 buses, and my own targeted fleet strength is going to be 5,000, which is going to operate through the public transport system of the state government. But if the requirement is of 10,000, then we should be permitted to bring in the additional 5,000 numbers through the participation of the private sector. I think some kind of a political convincing is really, really important as far as this part is concerned. Of course, there are allegations of, the attractive routes, the losing routes, and not so attractive routes, and the allocation of those. But there is a way when, if we really want to solve the issue, I think the state will have to take the responsibility to take a major share of the so-called unattractive routes if it wants the private sector to be an important player in this business. And that is where we have to look at that part of it, that we have to supplement the number of the fleet strength in the whole kitty of a particular state or number of states that we run along. Another thing that a passenger who is moving through a public transport system, and when I'm talking about this, I'm largely talking about the bus, is the wayside amenities. We don't have so far a concept of wayside amenities in India. Last 10 years have seen emergence of some good quality dhabas, hotels, or eating joints, waysides where buses go and park. But recognizing this as a necessity, now the ministry has asked the National Highway Authority of India, and which has a total of 180 sites across the national highways in the country, and association of private sector in it. The target is over a period of next 1.5 years to develop at least 1,000 wayside amenities along the national highways, over the land which is owned by the NHAI, as well as through the participation of private sector with co-branding by NHAI, giving them certain comforts. I hope that would meet the requirements to some extent. Asrtu has been doing a commendable work in terms of getting all the SRTUs and helping them in terms of standardization of various products as well as procurement of a huge amount of their consumables, whether it is spare parts or it is the oil and the lubricants which are purchased. As a matter of fact, having been associated with the High Part Purchase Committee of my state for more than 5-6 years, the Transport Department people every year, whenever the rate contracts for Transport Department were to be done, they would come and say, items 1 to 20 are already on Asrtu's list, therefore we don't need to come for procurement for these items, and these are the items where we need to procure. I mean, it's a commendable work which is being done by the Asrtu. In this behalf, a lot of value is being brought onto it. I would, as a matter of fact, I was requesting my colleague just now that I had a special request coming from the Director General of Supplies and Disposals of Government of India, who is a friend, who is my batchmate, to say that they have developed a government e-marketplace now, GEM, as even the Prime Minister talked about it yesterday, that the Asrtu also should join up with GEM and register on this, so that it will bring further competition as well as give opportunities to the small players in the sector to emerge on that platform and lead to their growth as well, and help the Asrtus to source the material at competitive rates. So I would request you to please join up on GEM if there are no issues. If you need to interact with Directorate General of Supplies and Disposals, I'll be happy to look at this part. The SRTUs also are facing a huge number of challenges in terms of O&M practices. But I am also aware that certain depots, certain places, certain states have been able to come out with some of the best practices which have been established. With all due respect to Elaine on this side, I find it hard to trust anything when I'm told this is in Mexico, this is in Brazil, this is in Moscow, or this is in Belgium. But I'm much more comfortable when I learn this is in Hyderabad, this is in Bangalore, this is in Delhi, this is in this adjoining town. Because here you have something seeing is believing, and you can, all the Indian conditions, the entire Indian ecosystem in which somebody takes a challenge and then comes out with a best practice which is successful, I think is a model which can be replicated by others. To that extent, I would really appreciate the volume that has been brought out in terms of best practices, and I would only request and suggest to Asrtu to get it converted into an e-book, downloadable by anyone from your website, and let people take on to that. Let it be a freely available e-book so that those practices can be taken on by other state road transport undertakings. And one of the standing agenda items of the meetings of the SRTU should be what are the best practices which have been adopted and which can be replicated with the same success or alike success in other states. Well, I've tried to touch something. I would have missed out on a number of issues. I don't have a structured written speech, though Mr. Anandrao tried to give me speaking points. Unfortunately, I can't keep myself onto such speaking points. So I thought whatever would come to my mind, I'll share with all of you. I wish this conference really success for these 2 days, and I'm sure that the deliberations would help in evolving a roadmap for the future as to how and in what manner we have to go faster. I wish the organizers and everybody this event a great success, and I thank again Asrtu, the organizers, for inviting me to be here with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Veer Singh Malik, for your notable inaugural address, and you shared your ministry's initiatives in furthering public transport as a means of mobility for one and all. Ladies and gentlemen, before we conclude the inaugural session, we'd like to present mementos to our esteemed guests as a token of appreciation. May I please request Mr. P.S. Anand Rao to kindly do the honors in presenting the mementos. Firstly, to our chief guest, Mr. Yudhvir Singh Malik. Thank you for being here with us, sparing your precious time and sharing your notable thoughts with us today. May I request Mr. Rao to present the next memento. Well, ladies and gentlemen, with this we conclude our inaugural session. May I please request our chief guest, Mr. Yudhvir Singh Malik, along with the dignitaries, to kindly inaugurate the second edition of the ICPTI exhibition on public transport innovation, and also to flag off the biofuel buses. And I'd like to add today that today is also the biofuel day, so very important day to flag off the biofuel buses. And may I also request all the chief executives, senior officers of the ministry, Secretary of Transport of States, Commissioner of Transport, and senior officers from the SRTUs to kindly join in the tour of the exhibition. Thank you once again. And may I request others to kindly join us for the short tea and coffee break. We're running slightly behind schedule. May I please request everyone to kindly join us back in the next 10 minutes for our first session. Thank you.
Urbanization has been changing the face of India, shrinking living spaces and hindering smooth road transport with a rapidly increasing number of vehicles. On the eve of its Golden Jubilee, Association of State Road Transport Undertaking
May I please request everyone to kindly take their seats and settle down. We are just about ready to begin the first session of the conference. May I please request everyone to please take their seats. Ladies and gentlemen, a very warm welcome to the first session of the conference, which is on Digital India Transforming Public Transport. The objective of the session is to promote digital transaction in the SRTUs to achieve the Government of India's target of total digital transactions to 2,500 crores by the financial year 2017-2018 from the existing 329 crores. We're extremely pleased to extend a very warm welcome to our session chair, Mr. Sanjay Kumar Rakesh, Joint Secretary in the Ministry of Electronics and IT. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in extending a very warm and hearty welcome to our session chair. We are joined by our panelist, Mr. Nalin Bansal, Vice President and Head, RuPay, Contactless National Payments Corporation of India. Mr. Manish Kumar, Senior Vice President and Head IT, DIMS. Mr. Alan Flosh, Secretary General of EITP. Dr. Malakondaya, Vice President of ASRTU and Vice Chairman and Managing Director of APSRTC. And last but not least, we are joined by Mr. Micah Bergdale, CEO of Bytemark from the United States of America. Ladies and gentlemen, in this session, the lead presentations will be made by Mr. Nalin Bansal along with Mr. Manish Kumar. Before we commence the session, I'd just like to briefly introduce our session chair. We are very pleased to have with us Mr. Sanjay Kumar Rakesh. He's from the Tripura cadre belonging to the 1990 batch of the Indian Administrative Service. Currently, he's the Joint Secretary in the Ministry of Electronics and IT, the Government of India. He's an alumnus of IIT Kanpur and has held several key positions in the center as well as the state. He has played multifaceted roles and shouldered many important responsibilities both at the center and the state. And with these words, ladies and gentlemen, may I request Session Chair to kindly make his opening remarks and take over the session.
Thank you, and good morning to everybody, my fellow panelists. Thank you for this organization to giving me the opportunity to be here and discuss with you regarding the digital payment. We will come on more discussion, but I think we should start with the presentation rather than discussing on the individual. The only thing I would like to press here is that we are at a stage in India where we are changing and changing rapidly. One of the changes is the way we transact. Money has been the mainstay of our dealings since the barter age probably, or since the gold age. And now we are trying to change that habit. Changing habit is much more difficult than changing other parts. And I'm told SRTUs and the transport caters to about 7 crore persons every day. That's a huge number. And added to that is the price sensitivity that these commuters have. We have all seen when there is a haggling for 25 paisa or 50 paisa, and the mode shift when the small change in the price. So with the digital, we hope the cost of transaction would come down. It would be ease of facilitation and would also lead to a more robust growth. At the pan-India level, there are several issues. We will come to that later when we discuss. But before that, I would request the lead presentation. I think first presentation is from the NPCI, which is on the forefront of leading the digital drive in the country. They have several products, and Mr. Nalin Bansal is the best placed to share with you what NPCI is doing. So without much, I'll request him to start with his presentation. Thank
you. Thank you, Honorable Joint Secretary, Executive Director, Asrtu, Vice Chairman, Asrtu. I think it is an honor to be here. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning, good afternoon, in fact. It's an honor to be here. I think whatever efforts we've had done in the past to help the economy, help the operators go digital, I think we will get a small window to present our efforts here. And some of you know that some of the projects have gone live recently. And what I have here is a brief presentation. We'll just talk about basics of what is NCMC and what is that we have in terms of products available for you to adopt, and certain deliberations around business modeling. So just before we start, we have a small video, so if you can quickly play.
India is home to 1.2 billion people and racing towards becoming a superpower with smart technologies available to every Indian. One of these technologies, transit card for traveling in bus, metros and trains to enjoy cashless transportations. Today, a person is expected to carry a separate transit card for each mode of transportation. But smart cities require smart payment systems, where people can use a single card for all payments. Isn't it? Introducing RuPay Contactless, an innovative new initiative by NPCI, the umbrella organization for retail payments in India, to address the long-standing need of a common mobility card as envisioned by the Ministry of Urban Development. This RuPay Contactless enabled revolutionary multi-purpose card will help in creating a vendor-agnostic ecosystem which can be adopted by any transit operator or bank. This RuPay Contactless enabled card is designed to help banks reduce their customers' effort of cash handling and provide them the convenience of single tap payment and open new revenue opportunities for bank. With RuPay Contactless, you can now use single card across all transit operators like metro train, bus service, etc. across the country. Make easy payments at any ATM, shops and even e-commerce websites. Unique service feature that allows merchants or operators to run proprietary programs on cards like passes, loyalty point storage, etc. What's more, RuPay Contactless card doesn't even require to enter PIN for transactions below 2,000 rupees. Stored value feature in cards is useful during offline payments, which allow quicker transaction processing. Even get regular lucrative offers and unbelievable RuPay discounts. Undoubtedly, this state-of-the-art payment card system like RuPay Contactless is a building block of smart and future India. It's time to use a single card for each and every payment across the country. RuPay Contactless, powered by NPCI.
Thank you. Your presentation, please. Okay, so just wanted to, before we start on with the proposition, we just wanted to share some good news and just a bit of history on NPCI. We were incorporated about 9 years ago, and presently we are an organization which is represented by 56 entities. Most of them are banks. So there are 19 public sector banks, there are 17 private sector banks. There's some foreign banks, cooperative banks, and the regional rural banks. This was set up under the guidance of RBI and IBA. IBA was an organization similar to ASRTU, which was looking at, it was an Indian Banking Association looking at interests of banking sector. And since that point onwards, I think we moved on quite a bit. We started with a single proposition of managing interbank ATM settlements. And over the years, we've grown. And currently, we have roughly about, I would say, about 10 to 12 platforms that we manage. In fact, only last month, we touched about 1 billion transactions in processing in a single month, which I think is possibly the number of transactions that we have in the bus sector for the year. And for all these platforms combined, and RuPay itself, the card platform, is about 20%. So we do about 200 million transactions a month on the RuPay platform. And so our latest, I just touch upon the last 2 years. So last year had been very exciting, including the launch of RuPay contactless. We also launched UPI, we launched BHIM, and the Bharat bill payment system. Now, for the purpose of today, I'm going to focus on the RuPay contactless program. While all the other platforms that we have, specifically, our mobile platforms like BHIM and UPI, they are very, very relevant for even the mobile, mobile services and mobile ticketing services. But at this point in time, we have the RuPay contactless program, and we'll just go slightly more detail into that. So NCMC. So this was a initiative that started about 2 years ago under the guidance of Ministry of Urban Development and Ministry of IT, and there were a lot of deliberations around what should be built for the country, which can be adopted by multiple operators, whether it is bus operators, transit operators, they are metro operators, and we were called upon, and we were building at that point specifications for RuPay card to be contactless, and while working with the ministry and with few of the stakeholders at that point in time, we developed the card specifications so that we were able to adopt what were the requirements and the pain points of the market at that point in time presented to us, and then therefore came the emergence of the NCMC guidelines last year, and 3 projects went live this year. We had the Kochi Metro going live in June, and we had the Bangalore Municipal Transport going live in June again, and the Ahmedabad Smart City going live again in June. And so these were the 3 projects that went live on the NCMC guidelines, which were released last year. And I just wanted to get a little bit detail into what the platform is about. So some of you may have seen this slide many times. So this is a single card. Essentially, this is a card which is your existing card that you carry in your wallet. It's a debit card or a credit card or a prepaid card, depending on what you have taken from your bank. This card additionally has an interface which is known as the contactless interface, which is why we also call it the dual interface card, because you can use it in a contact mode and you can also use it in a contactless mode. While it has an additional interface, the chip it contains, which is a single chip, also has the concept of storing memory, right? So it has a memory storage, which can be used to store balances, it can be used to store loyalty points, it can be used to store passes and things like that. All that the ecosystem needs to do is to be able to prepare readers to be able to read those memory spaces. Additionally, these memory spaces can be read offline, which means that it doesn't require the card or the terminal to go check with the bank host, say that, can I read this? Is it right? Is it wrong? These reading of memory spaces can happen absolutely offline. So the terminal need not go online for reading of any of these memory spaces. So by doing this, what we were able to create was something known as a card balance. So when we created the card balance, then that became like a pot of money that can be utilized by all these transit operators who have terminals in various environments, whether they're online, offline, whichever method they have deployed them. And this pot of money on the card can be used to issue tickets, one-time tickets. What it did was it cut down the speed of transaction. So it cut down from roughly about 3 to 4 seconds to about 400 milliseconds. And suddenly the card became more attractive for high-speed transactions and queuing areas where you expect people to quickly finish whatever they are trying to do with the card. So that is one benefit. So it gives you the ability to store balance. It gives you the ability to store loyalty points. It gives you the ability to store passes, and which is why you can sort of use it in multiple scenarios. You can use it in retail shop like as a normal card. You can use it in tolls with the offline card balance, that pot of money. You can use it in ATM to withdraw cash if it's a debit card. Parking, buses, metro, and all these areas. I've already spoken about this, but we felt it was important to highlight some of the salient features, and some 5 of them that we were able to summarize here. One, it is a bank issue standard secure payment method. It is based on an EMV plus standard. The reason why we call it EMV plus is because it has the stored value concept. It is a vendor agnostic ecosystem, which means that there are standard vendors for issuance of the cards. There are standard vendors for manufacturing of the cards, in fact. And there are standard terminals available in the market which can read these cards. While one argument could be that those terminals, contactless terminals, are lesser in the country, which is fair enough, but the point here is that these are standard designs, and these are certified at 3 levels. They're certified at an hardware level, which is EMV code. They're certified at an OS level by NPCI, which is the kernel, and then they're certified at the application level. So they're certified at 3 levels, and only certified terminals are then programmed to then accept these cards. We have about 1 million such terminals, contactless terminals in the market, at least in the retail environment. On the transit environments, those 3 projects, whatever is there, those terminals are deployed, and that number is slowly growing. So there are 4 more projects which are in pipeline on the similar card. The third part is the provision of stored value I spoke about, which is the ability to dedicate a memory space to store a certain pot of money, which you can use for offline transactions. Fourth, I spoke about additional memory space where you can store your other data. It could be identification data it could be PAN, DL, or any other financial inclusion data that you would like to store on the card. Most importantly, that this is an open loop card, which means that while you can use it in your own specific environment, you can use the offline stored value, you can use your own loyalty points that you've created on the card. The card can be used extensively as like any other card in the normal environment as well. So I can just pull out that card and use it in any shop or in any ATM, like I do it with my debit card. A small structure that we wanted to share, because I think there were certain questions that we used to get on how this will get integrated into the fare structure and things like that. So we tried to simplify it. Essentially, like it happens for all the card issuance and acceptance in the market, it requires a bank on the issuing side and it requires a bank on the acquiring side. You could choose to have both of them as one, you can choose to have both of them as different. That's a commercial modeling which is up to you. Assuming there is an issuing bank which issues this card, you don't need to actually go and talk to a bank. Banks could on their own issue these cards. You could have a commercial agreement with the bank to issue these cards. As I said, that's a choice that you have along with the bank. Once these cards are issued, the value all that the customer needs to do is put a certain store value on the card. So he can do it online, he can do it on the counter using cash. If these cards are prepaid cards, they can be issued at your counter. If these cards are debit cards, they can be issued by the bank and they can be mailed to the customer. Once these cards are issued and he goes to your counter to load cash on the stored value, then he can use that store value at your respective environments. When that transaction is completed, it is then picked up by our AFC, and then it is sent to your respective acquiring bank. So it doesn't require anything else. All it needs to do is that your AFC system should be able to speak to the reader and should be able to speak to an acquiring bank to offload those transactions to the acquiring bank. Once it is able to do that, which usually happens at the end of the day, this settlement between the acquiring bank and the issuing bank is something that we manage. All the transactions that you've acquired over the day are posted to us by your acquiring bank, and then we settle it with the respective issuing banks. So for example, in a day you would have done 1 million transactions. Then the entire record of those million transactions, the money related to those million transactions, let's say 10 rupees each transaction, 10 million rupees, is then posted back to respective issuing banks. That could be n in number, and respective number will go to the issuing bank. That's the job we do. And that respective amount is then sent back to the acquiring bank, which then passes on that amount to you. So this whole settlement of issuing and acquiring is something we do. From an operator point of view, all that we need to manage is that your AFC system, and then Manish is going to talk a little bit about that, your AFC system should be able to speak to the terminal or to the device, and it should be able to speak to the acquiring bank. That's the only integration that the AFC system needs to go through. Okay, so I purposely put in this slide. This was not in the agenda, but we've been hearing a lot of rumors, and there was a lot of talk about what of basis of the deployments that have gone live recently. So I think one thing is for sure, that our ability to make these live, I think there's a lot of effort that has gone through from the ministry side, from the operator side, from us, from banks. It's been a 2.5, 3-year-old project if you look at Kochi Metro and BMTC. And these are first deployments. So of course there are experiences out of these deployments that may not have gone right. There are experiences of these deployments which have gone really, really good. And that also, and the real validation of that how well these deployments have been, that same banks are going ahead and looking at more such projects. So the whole point being that these are first deployments, and of course these deployments, the fact that they're running and they're operational, they may have operational challenges, but these are operational in the market today. And we are working round the clock to make sure that we are able to close in. In fact, basis of these launches that happened in June, we have also modified a little bit on our specifications. We are taking care of certain issues that were highlighted to us. So all those things we have taken care of. And then so the point being, then it is not a slow method of transaction. Somewhere, actually it all depends on how your application is coded on the device and on the applet. In other environments that we've seen, we are able to achieve about 450 millisecond transaction time period. So it is not a slow method at all. The whole idea, because why we took it offline, was to reduce the transaction time. Even in an online scenario, we are able to do it within 2-3 seconds. So when you cut down the online part and you only are talking between the terminal and the card, the time of transaction is drastically reduced. If your application is really, really slick, it can even drop in from 450 milliseconds. So really, that is not the kill factor here. The second and the most, I think, misunderstood part is that the NCMC guidelines are not just RuPay. It is not something that only RuPay can do NCMC, and these are only going to be RuPay cards. NCMC guidelines were, laid down by the ministry to ensure that these are adoptable by all card schemes. The whole fact is that NCMC is dependent on a contactless, architecture. And the contactless architecture varies across the scheme. So if you look at scheme A or scheme B or scheme C, they all have different methods of doing contactless. They don't, and they even country-wise they may have something different. So all we said was that here is a method to do contactless in this country, which suits our environment, which suits our requirement, given our network problems, connectivity problems, given our diversity of operations of operators and things like that. These are contactless specifications available for you to adopt. Of course, RuPay adopted them, and we, despite having something of our own already, we adopted midway, and we have gone ahead and adopted the NCMC contactless specifications. The similar thing can be adopted by other card schemes as well. It's only a matter of time when they would do it. It's not a proprietary guideline or specification. It is open for all card schemes to adopt. So that's something very important to understand, that this is not just RuPay. And more importantly, any bank can issue. Well, yes, some banks may not be ready to issue today because they're not certified for issuing, but any bank can issue these cards or accept these cards. There were certain questions around the cost of it. The float money doesn't come to them, the terminal cost, the fare media, the fact that it will require huge changes in AFC, it will require an integrated AFC and all that. Not all of that is true. Partly, of course, there is a change in the way float is managed. In a closed loop system, the float is managed within the operator's environment. In an open loop system, the float will be managed by the bank. While that happens via the bank, there are other advantages that the banks are going to offer to you. So I think there is a cost benefit analysis that the operator needs to do to ensure that you get something, and so from a consumer point of view, I think it's important to understand that he cannot carry multiple cards. Today in my wallet I have 9 cards, 4 of RuPay alone. We can't have multiple cards in your wallet, and you can't maintain multiple balance. Even if you're okay to manage multiple cards, you can't have multiple balances running. So I have balance A for Delhi Metro, or maybe balance A for some other metro or bus operator. That's something customers should not be forced to do. So there is a difference in float management. On the terminal side, I think that's the biggest myth I think we've heard. These are standard terminals. These are terminals, as I said, certified at 3 levels. There are standard vendors in the market. While you may have specific requirements of QR code reading and ticket printing and something others, you may want to type something more than what it is already there. And you may have, on the communication side, so those variations obviously need to be looked at and built maybe in some cases. But these are standard terminals. Of course, because they're highly secure, they have certain modules, they conform to a certain hardware standard, their cost does go up a little bit. So they're not something like a 1,000 rupee terminal or a 2,000 rupee terminal. But these costs are coming down. And these are important terminals for you. You would not want to, and these are rugged terminals. They can withstand high temperature, high humidity. So it's important to look at terminals which are rugged and which have a certain standard. Fare media, I think this is the biggest myth. Once you go to an open loop card, there is no fare media. Your fare media is your card. So you could, if you have a pass, you could store the pass on the card. If you have a single ticket, you may need a ticket. If you want to give him a physical ticket, you can actually store the ticket on the card. You can temporarily store the ticket on the card, which can be checked midway somewhere if required. So there is no fare media cost here, really, if you ask me, on the NCMC card. And on the AFC side, like you looked at the architecture previously, the architecture is very simple. All it says that your AFC needs to speak to a bank, and it needs to speak to the device to pick up the transaction. So it speaks to the device to pick up the transaction and forwards those transactions to the bank. That's all it needs to do. And these are simple interfaces. They can happen over file. I'm not going to go through this much in detail. I think this is very well understood, in terms of certain benefits to the ecosystem. Of course, from an operator's perspective and a customer perspective. The biggest, of course, is our ability to reduce cash in these transactions and rely more on digital platform. So these are 3 projects I spoke about. These are the ones which are currently live in their respective environments. All of them are utilizing the NCMC card-based payment system. We felt that, so these are some salient features on the BMTC model. So this is, of course, the first program on the bus side which was supporting open loop EMB transit card. The issuance of these cards was personalized. So these are essentially prepaid cards. It's like a bank issued prepaid card. With a minimum KYC, you could have up to 20,000. With full KYC, you can have up to 1 lakh. Balance in the card. And because these are prepaid cards, you could actually issue it at a counter, which could be your counter. It could be, so in case of BMTC, they set up counters to issue these cards, and these are personalized. So you could have pictures on it of the traveler, and you can do on the spot printing. There was convenience of recharge. You could recharge using cash. So since it's a prepaid card, you can recharge the store value and the prepaid value using cash. And of course, there's an ease of. So the biggest point is that he can use this card anywhere outside BMTC. He's not bound to use it within BMTC. Currently, I think they're using it only for the purse, which means the passes, and slowly they're also going to use it for ticketing. Okay, a quick slide. We were trying to do some, thought process into. If we look at the various SRTUs in the country, they could be in different phases, right? There are SRTUs who are already aligned with a financial institution and a system integrator for fare collection. There are SRTUs which are only aligned with the system integrator, which means they have some sort of an AFC system, but their payment mechanisms are not standardized. And there are SRTUs which are still managing in-house fare management with primarily cash collection. So if we were to sort of bifurcate, we could create these 3 categories. And for all these 3 categories, we felt that if they were to adopt an open loop system, what is that they need to do? So simplicity put, if I look at the first category where SRTUs are doing in-house fare collection and which is primarily cash, the first thing they will have to do, obviously, along with the system integrator, is to create a back-end fare collection system, right? Which could be an AFC-based system, and I think DIMS is playing a very important role in that, and that's an area that they will have to work upon first. Secondly, they will have to then look at devices which are going to connect to that AFC system, and these have to be EMV-based devices. And thirdly, they need to associate with the bank for issuance and acceptance of these cards. So a certain bank, if they would like to issue banks out of their own premises, so they'll have to work with the bank to issue these cards, and they'll have to work with the bank to acquire these cards through their AFC system. So broadly, these 3 steps: get your AFC, get your machines that you will be utilizing in your buses, and get your banks. With all these 3 in line, you can start issuing open loop cards when they are integrated. Similar things, if you go forward, if you look at SRTUs who have an SI, all they need to do is then look at converting their existing machines to an EMV-based machine and looking at banks to integrate with these their AFC system and to acquire and issue these cards. And of course, there's probably nothing much to be done in case an SRT has already adopted that model. So this is the last slide for me. I just was we were trying to attempt, if this is to be done, what are the business cases that they can look at as an SRTU? So if you look at the first column, this talks about public transport operator. These are bus operators or transit operators. Then there is the issuing bank, there's acquiring bank, and there's customer. So if you look at public transport operator, there's a capex investment on AFC and maybe possibly OPEX investment as well, which obviously is something that a PTA will have to manage out of their own revenue model. Then there is capex investment in terminals. Now this is a debatable item. We've seen all sort of models operating in the globe and in the country. More importantly, in certain cases these terminals are fully funded by the PTO in case they have the financial strength to do so. In some cases, the bank share their cost, and that even happens in the market. If you look at the retail environment, there are rental, structures. There are structures where the merchant would own the terminal. So there are all sort of structures available in the market, and that's a complete, again, it's a commercial discussion that you can have with your bank, acquiring bank, that whether you would like them to fund or you would like to fund and ask them to only maintain these terminals. Transaction charges, of course. So once you look at acquiring these, issuing these cards and doing these transactions, the card, there are certain transaction charges which are usually shared between the issuing bank and the acquiring bank. Acquiring bank is going to get that portion of transaction charge because he's maintaining these terminals for you, he's doing your clearing and settlement. And issuing bank morely because he's issuing these cards and he's bearing the cost of customer funds management and the issuance of these cards. There's a fourth line item which I think maybe probably was not understood or maybe not dwelled much into. There's a mechanism of also taking activation charges on the card. So that's a revenue generating opportunity for them. So it's not just a cost center. Payment mechanism is not a cost center alone. And you're saying that if you are issuing these cards, you're giving certain convenience to the customer. There could be a certain activation fee that you could levy on those cards, and these could be idly paid by the issuing bank. So if there is one bank, then that bank, or there are more than one bank, then all those banks, depending on how many per active cards they have, to ensure, and ideally it should be ensured that these are not passed on to the customer. So I think this was broadly what we wanted to share, and I may have run over my time, but that's all from us. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Nalin. Thank you for sharing with us this whole program of NCMC. In fact, we are all waiting for its rapid rollout and rapid acceptance also. But at the same time, there are other options also, which of course all SRTU can all explore. And charges are the way you bargain with the bank. Is that right? So with the new NCMC being the process of rollout, now I would request, we'll take question and answer afterwards.
No problem.
Presentation we go
Yeah,
on.
sure.
So Mr. Manish Kumar, Senior Vice President from DIMITS, to suggest the way the SRTU should go. In fact, there is a background to it. There was a meeting or a workshop with the state RTUs, and after deliberations some way out was found. So Manish will present to that. Of course, any doubts on that or issues we will discuss, but then floor is
Thank you, Mr. Rakesh, for introducing me, and a very good afternoon to all of you. I'm here to share the views that we have gathered over the years in digitalizing fare collection. DIMS, as you pretty much all know about us, we are an operator. We run bus operations, but we are also a technology developer or a technology solution developer. And one of the things that we have been actively working on over the last several years is developing fare collection systems. And some of those are deployed in a couple of cities where we run our bus operations, Delhi and Nagpur. And in due course, we also signed an MOU with NPCI just to sort of bring in the best of breed. And that's what I'm going to share through this presentation. It's in three parts, really. The first part is what we have observed are the technologies and practices that are being followed across the globe. I want to Right. So obviously ticketing can happen on board or off board. This slide talks about what's happening across the globe in terms of on-board ticketing. Now the first one that you top left that you see is obviously the favorite paper ticket. That is what is predominantly happening in India, as we see. Even though many STUs have implemented ticketing devices, ETMs, but they still generate paper tickets using those ETMs. And I'll come back to paper tickets again later during the slides because there is a business case for the STUs here adopting non-paper based tickets. The other, at the bottom left, what we see are the contactless cards, stored value contactless cards. And this is, I believe, by far the most adopted solution across the globe. They are easy to adopt, easy for the customer. It's just a tap and pay card, and in many cases tap in, tap out. So it's very convenient for the customers. The field devices pretty much that are available across the globe nowadays, they have the necessary NFC components, and therefore they are also enabled to accept payments by this form factor. What is now also happening across the globe is because smartphones are proliferating, they have become a means of payment. Now within smartphones, what you will notice are, I put 3 or 4 images below that. The first and the most preferred option for smartphone-based payments would be NFC. But not all smartphones are NFC compliant or NFC enabled. They don't have the NFC features. Less than 10% smartphones today have that, and therefore there is a bit of a challenge in using that as the technology for the operators. Some operators have adopted communicating to the smartphone using the Wi-Fi within the buses. There is a company by the name of Riddler who has done that in Mumbai, in Best, and it's working pretty well, but there is always a latency in the transaction. Bluetooth is another technology that is getting adopted. Bluetooth beacons have become very, reasonably priced, and they have good battery life. So you can put a Bluetooth beacon inside the bus, and that will identify a Bluetooth-enabled phone, and most phones are Bluetooth-enabled, and be able to transact using that phone. Or the onboard units within the bus could be used as a medium for connecting to a commuter's phone. The primary difference between using a mobile-based ticketing versus a card-based is that in the case of mobile, recharge is much easier. In a card, when you recharge, even though you may recharge online, but you still have to go to a validator to top up the balance. But then cards are much easier to carry, and particularly when in urban in urban buses where there are crush loads, you wouldn't want to really fiddle with your mobile, and when you are in congested buses, a card is much easier in that case. Next slide. These are the trends that we have noticed as far as off-board ticketing is concerned. People can buy a ticket before they board the bus. It could be a visually verifiable ticket like you see in the top left, where you have a QR code as well as some content of the ticket in terms of destination, origin, destination, etc. Or it could be an M code, which is for feature phones. And amongst the panelists we have Mika from Bytemark, and they are one of the companies which is pioneer in this space. And if you want to know more about M codes, he's the person to catch. And then obviously we can have ticket vending machines, but not necessarily suitable for urban road transport. Maybe okay for intercity where the environment is much more secure. But then for these kind of ticket media, we need validators in the buses. One of the validators, obviously, you have to have a barcode reader. In case of NFC enabled phones, you don't need a barcode reader. The ticket, we just need a normal typical validator or an ATM machine with an NFC enabled ATM machine. And the bottom, the blue picture that you see is about the Bluetooth readers. So one can buy a ticket off board, and the Bluetooth beacon will read the ticket information and validate the ticket. So these are what we have typically seen are the trends and practices that are being followed globally. Next slide, please. What I am sharing here is some opportunity size. Based on the study conducted by Morth for 46 STUs in the year 14-15, there were 25 billion transactions in the year. And most of these, other than intercity, were low-value transactions. And this is the sort of market opportunity that we have. If we can even digitalize 1/5 of that, then we'll meet the target that the government of India has in terms of digitalizing the transactions in the road transport. Next, please. But then there are challenges, and most of the state road transport undertaking officials sitting here would agree. There are issues with respect to capability within the transport undertakings, to the challenge of re-engineering the business processes, to the typical resistance to change. But then what is also not happening, what is going wrong is that a lot of the implementations that are being done today are all ETM-led implementations. They are not AFCS implementations per se, which is why it is becoming very difficult for many of them to digitalize their ETM implementations. STUs are, again, they're trying to adopt systems and technologies which are non-standard, and therefore they are getting caught into the contract period with substandard, non-standard technologies. That they are struggling with the time to market, the cost to market, the viability of the projects. Many small operators particularly do not have the scale to adopt such technologies. And unlike the metros who are bringing in the banks to deploy AFCS systems, and the SRTUs are not necessarily doing that, except I guess 1 or 2 cities. Pune has done a great job. Central Bank has implemented their AFCS system end to end, rather than a solution provider implementing or a technology company implementing the AFCS system. The SRTUs are also struggling to bring in the best of breed technologies or solution providers. And as we have spoken earlier, that there are other inherent problems with bus operations. The commuters buy the ticket, particularly in the urban bus operations, they buy the ticket after boarding the bus. And therefore, the time to ticket, the GPS connectivity, and are all the barriers that have to be surmounted by the and therefore the need for a robust AFCS system. So this is what we recommend. We want to sort of recommend a very flexible, open framework, which should enable the SRTUs to either adopt closed loop, transition into open loop, or be at semi-closed loop, but bring in the banks to manage the payments, because that is what the bank's primary business is, and that's what they are best at, right? Something like what Pune has done, or even UPSRTC has good examples to that. So bring in the banks, leverage their capability in the payment system, and if you're going to open loop or transitioning into open loop, then there is an already existing infrastructure that Nalin from NPCI spoke about, which can be leveraged. So no point creating your own clearing houses, or no point trying to reinvent the wheel. What I would like to particularly mention in this slide is, you would notice that I've highlighted one operator as a bigger sort of circle, and that is because what we want to recommend is that the big operators in the city or region should actually take the lead of bringing in the AFCS system. And then the smaller operators within the region or the city can just hook on. They still have the independence to bring their ticketing system, the ETM devices. They can choose which ETM devices, as long as those ETM devices follow a certain standard and specifications. They just have to hook on to this larger AFCS system. So by doing so, because the big operators would have the scale and the ability to bring in such AFCS systems, everybody in the region will benefit, and more importantly, the commuters will benefit, because then they can use just one card across all these different modes or operators. What is also beneficial for the banks, therefore, is that they have only got one integration point for that region. What we are observing is that every bank is trying to integrate with to a AFCS system of every city, and within the city, every operator. And that creates a lot of reinventing the wheel, and at the end of the day, this increases the cost of the ticketing, and somebody has to pay for it. So create an open, flexible infrastructure for the region, or if it's a large city, just for the city, and the largest operator in that city should take the lead and implement it. But for that, one of the things that I want to particularly mention is that we need to follow a certain standard, and I brought up this in the challenges slide, because if we don't follow the standards, then adopting the best in breed would become a challenge, and suboptimal solutions will start rolling out in the market. Many of the SRTUs are sort of coming up with new tenders or new contracts, or their contracts are about to close and they will be coming up with new contracts soon. What I would recommend to all of you is to make sure that the ticketing devices that are being procured do have the feature of NFC in them, have the barcode readers in them, because then you will be able to use virtually verifiable tickets, like I mentioned, with ability to read QR codes or barcodes. They should be real-time connected to the backend system, but because that creates a lot of other opportunities for the SRTU in terms of monitoring their day-to-day operations real-time, and fourthly, they should be EMV certified devices. That will enable transition from a closed loop to open loop. The transition will be very seamless. Otherwise, it will become a very difficult transition, because then you will have to replace the devices or wait for the next few years till the contract gets over. So what are the benefits? If we adopt this model, the benefits are, by bringing the banks, the SRTUs don't need to manage the issuance of the cards and the customer account management and all of those things that SRTUs can do away with. That will be taken care of by the banks. The logistics of the card, the cost of the card, front-ending, creating a help desk for the customers. Banks already have this existing setups. And then banks can actually start contributing towards the CapEx and OpEx of this project or the solution, because this creates a potential for them to acquire new customers. So they will pitch in. Can actually bring down the cost. We don't need to spend that cost on the paper. So actually there is a very strong business case for SRTUs to digitalize their transactions, and something that gets overlooked many a times. Reduction in 10% of fare collection cost is actually a good business case. So I'm going to quickly flip over the next 2-3 slides. I'm pretty much done. Next slide, please. Next. To improve the viability, and which is why we recommend that one should go for semi-closed or open, is that then it can be extended to other modes of transport, and next slide please, and also to other modes of payment, because cross-selling will actually subsidize the cost of ticketing even further. So versus an closed loop, just a pure play closed loop may actually not give the cross subsidies will not be coming from the other channels of payment. So final slide from me, just to wrap up. The things that we should really focus on. At the end of the day, the solution has to be designed to be in the interest of the commuters and not in the interest only of the SRTUs. The SRTUs also should be owning the solution. I have seen a few SRTUs where they have just outsourced the entire system, and they don't have any clue of their data or any access to the data. They don't look at the data. It's all been outsourced, and that is not the right place to be in. It should allow for intermodal adoption, because that will improve the viability. It should be extendable to the National Common Mobility Card, which Nalin shared. We should bring in the banks to leverage their payments infrastructure rather than create our own. And the system should be form factor agnostic, because smart cards are slowly getting replaced by mobile phones, and mobile phones are getting replaced by wearable devices. It should also be bank and OEM agnostic, so that one time we can create the AFCS layer, and all kinds of issuing banks can come into mix, and that will improve the competitiveness on the ground rather than creating a monopolistic structure. And therefore, this will all lead to low entry costs and better viability for the SRTUs. That's all I wanted to share. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Manish. Thank you for giving us for the SRTU a roadmap, and indeed 10% reduction in operational expenses does make a lot of sense, and I hope it will also improve the efficiency. So thanks again, and from here we come with my request to Mr. Alain Frost, Secretary General UITP, to share a few words with us.
Thank you, sir. Yes, maybe some background information. I was involved in this ticketing system in the early 2000s, and in those days we had to go through heavy investment in hardware, because the banks were not interested and the telecoms were not interested. Banks, because they thought the micro transaction was not interesting, and the telecoms, because by that time the penetration of mobile phone was not yet as big as it is today. So my first thing it's now the right time to go into electronic ticketing and payment, because everything has been simplified in terms of investment, and technology is there, the players are ready to work, and so it's really the right time to do it. And it was much harder times ago. But maybe a more strategic vision, technology as such is nothing but an enabler. And basically what we need to do is simplify the life of our customer, facilitate life. If you look at public transport and you compare it to driving a car, public transport is very difficult because the whole world has been designed for car now, unfortunately, and you just don't think about it. You just take the key of your car and you jump in your car. And even if a few miles away from your home you are stuck in a traffic jam, everything is done for you. It's easy. You don't even think about it. Public transport, they use that in Germany. You have first, they say, denken, umsteigen. It means you have first to think about it, how you're going to organize your mobility during the day. It's only 2 minutes, but those 2 minutes are the most important, because then you say, okay, I'm going to go there and there. How do I go to public transport? Where do I go? Where is the next bus station? Where is the bus? First of all, you got to know. So now technology will help you very much, because on your device you can see, the bus station is there, wherever you are. Then, and you enter, say, hey, how do I get a ticket? I remember some 20 years ago in Germany and Italy, there was no one selling a ticket on the trains or on the bus. So on the Sunday, for instance, in Italy, I remember willing to take the tramway and didn't have any ticket, no place to buy a ticket. So it was fare dodging from the very outset, just because I had to jump on the tramway, but there's no way to buy a ticket. So it's difficult to buy a ticket. So now again, to facilitate life of a customer, we have all those devices which allow us to know where to go and to buy the ticket and to pay. And then in addition, technology will help us to say, where do I stop? For many old people, when they take a bus or a train, they just worried about where to stop. How will they be advised at the next station? All those devices are there. So the whole idea is making the whole process of public transportation as easy as possible, as understandable as possible, so that then we can really compete with the car, because it's as easy to use public transport thanks to all this. So that would be my view, is that if we use technology, which is coming now, we need to try to digitalize the whole process. And of course, from the operator view side, there's plenty of other benefits that we can draw, but from the customer viewpoint, if we can digitalize all this and make it easy, we're going to win the battle on the long run. Until now, it's still a bit complicated, especially for occasional traveler. For routine commuter, they know how it works and they know where to stop and where to go. But for many people today, it's still an obstacle, and I think that was worth mentioning. So that it should be or go like, making it easy.
Thank you, Blas. Thank you for giving your insight the way we want to. Now I request Mr. Mika Bardal, who has been on the forefront of the digital ticket shift. So, come for his views. Yeah.
Hello there. Let's see if we can get the presentation working. What's that? It's, yeah. Is there anyone that could bring the presentation up, perhaps?
You want to give the cue to that gentleman standing right there.
Okay.
He's the one that's going to.
So I'll jump into why mobile ticketing, but let me give a little bit of background about who I am, how I got involved with mobile ticketing. My career started with Apple back in 2001. I worked for Apple from 2001 to 2003, and then I was an outside consultant for Apple from 2004 to 2010. 2010 rolled around, and the iPhone was really starting to pick up steam, and people were starting to develop apps. And we took a step back and we said, wouldn't it be interesting if we could do things around payments and around ticketing with users' mobile devices? And so we started Bytemark in New York City, and it was a small group of friends that came together, including some former Apple people, and we were able to get our first client, which was the New York City ferry system called New York Waterway, and presented our solution, and from there we just continued to grow within the mass transit industry. We came into the Indian market, it was about almost 2 years ago, it was end of 2015, where some friends of mine and some employees of ours had actually encouraged me to look at setting up a dev shop, particularly in Bangalore. So I thought, all right, I've never been to India before, let's get on a plane and go and learn a little bit more about the Indian market and what we might be able to do here. And we set up shop at the beginning of 2016. And it was very interesting talking to the team that we started to develop, because as interested as they were in developing the apps that we were working on within the North American market and the Western European market, they said, what can we do in order to bring this technology into India? And so as we've grown as a company, we're now about 35 people in our Bangalore office. Over the next year, we're making investments into India, where we expect to be close to 100 people here within the Indian market, that we're going to be selling into a number of different transport operators. We've met with a number of different transport operators to be able to bring this technology over. So just a little bit of history about myself and the company and kind of where we're at, what we're doing here within the Indian market. So the big question of why mobile ticketing, and I think a lot of it stands out as being pretty obvious. You've got the convenience of ticketing right on your phone, so you're not having to queue up. You're able to just bring it up and automatically get onto the bus, whether that validation methodology is visual, 2D barcode, NFC. Having that locally on your device, which is a device that seems like everybody carries anymore, just makes it that much easier. And then being able to have the instant ticketing in any modes of transportation. Within the North American and Western European markets, we've actually done multimodal solutions where people are on ferries, they're on buses, they're on trains, and they can buy a pass that allows them to be able to get access to all these different modes of transport. And so it makes it, again, that much more convenient because they aren't having to worry about different tickets or different ticket types that they're having to switch over. We've actually created a consolidated app, particularly for Seattle, where they have a monorail system, a streetcar system, a train system, a bus system, and a ferry system. And having that all consolidated into one app, so somebody buys a ticket, they're able to ride on all of these different modes of transport within the Seattle metro area. So we're definitely seeing a lot more around multimodal solutions. And no more cash. I know that there's obviously a very strong initiative here within India to be able to move towards digitization of payments. And at the end of the day, dealing with cash actually is a huge expense, and there's a lot of leakage, and there are a lot of challenges to managing that, whereas by having something that's just on your mobile device makes it that much easier for the operator, because they aren't having to worry about the operational costs of managing that cash. And then you have the improved customer experience. So one of the things that we're definitely starting to see more and more of is the level of engagement that you're able to do on the mobile app. It's not just about having a ticket on your phone. It's about being able to talk directly to that transit rider and have a conversation with them about what their needs are, any problems that they had riding the transit system, being able to provide them with trip planning solutions directly within the mobile ticketing solution. So you're able to plan out where you're going, how long that trip's going to take, what's the ticket type that you need. I know that especially if it's a city that I'm not familiar with and I end up getting off an airplane and I'm thinking, what's the fare type that I even need in order to be able to ride on this transit system, having a trip planner that I can just automatically go, similar to an Uber, I just say, this is my destination, here are my modes of transportation, here's the cost of the ticket. And that's what we've done in a number of different markets. One of our main investors, a company called Hakan, some of you may be familiar with them, based out of Germany. They're part of the Siemens Mobility family. They're a partner and investor in Bytemark. we've brought their technology together with mobile ticketing in order to have a truly integrated solution. So somebody plans out their trip, they're able to buy the ticket, and then they're able to have that ticket ready to go. And then you have the reliability of time information. So being able to do real-time information about where the buses are at, where the trains are at. Taking public transit around India is very fascinating because it doesn't seem like there's really a schedule per se. It's just kind of the bus or the train ends up showing up when it ends up showing up. And so I think what's valuable is being able to, as a rider, know at least when that train or when that bus is going to arrive, where it's at, so you can at least plan a little bit better about what you're going to be doing with transit. So again, bringing that information into the larger mobile ticketing solution. If you want to go to the next slide. So looking at kind of the current ticketing versus mobile ticketing solutions. And you've got pre-printed paper-based ticketing with additional costs for printing the passes. So there's always going to be a cost of distributing out the paper. If you want to have a little bit more security, you might have secure type paper that it's actually printed onto. Managing that, the machines sometimes have malfunctions that are actually doing the printing, maintaining the machines that are doing the printing. So there's definitely a cost that you have to deal with in terms of the printed solution. And then you have the OpEx associated with accounting, reconciliation, settlement of it, which again can be quite complicated when you have a distributed system that might be doing printed tickets all over your entire system. You also have high levels of fraud that can exist. It amazes me also traveling around the world how many times that I've heard stories about very inventive riders that are out there that essentially create a fraudulent paper-based ticket in order to get onto the system. And trying to mitigate or minimize that fraud as much as possible using the latest in mobile technology. And then you can also have just a requirement for comparatively higher CapEx and OpEx as it relates to physical media distribution. So whether you're looking at doing a smart card that's a dedicated card for your system, or you're even doing something where you're supporting an open loop so you can accept bank debit cards and credit cards, the challenge that exists with that is the distribution of that card. If it is a bank card, you have to be PCI compliant. Your devices have to be PCI compliant. You have to maintain an audit every single year that can be quite costly for a lot of organizations. So, we want to find different ways that mobile can help minimize that overall cost. And so by moving over to mobile, you're reducing that paper cost and providing some easy options that you can be able to purchase the ticket. And then reducing the operating expense associated with ticket issuance. So being able to have the accounting and reconciliation just get downloaded in your system. It's a centralized system that manages that. We've done exports into just about every accounting system out there for people to be able to do the end-of-day accounting and reconciliation for the tickets. And then the reduction of fraud and increased accountability. One thing I've also found too, and Alan also kind of mentioned this as well, that it's not even that people want to evade fare, it's that they find it difficult to even buy the fare in the first place. And so you're providing them with a method that if they are an honest passenger, that it's very easy for them to be able to purchase that. And it's in a form factor that they're very used to using on a day-to-day basis. So you're reducing the fraud, increasing the accountability for your passenger, and hopefully, as we've seen actually in a number of different systems, increasing the overall revenue that you're collecting without necessarily even increasing the fares that you're putting out there. So it's amazing how the compliance actually has increased for a couple of the systems we've worked with just by deploying a mobile solution. And then providing a flexible business model that can do both CapEx and OpEx. So what we mean by that is with mobile, we've done solutions where it's a fixed cost. So you're basically buying a software as a service, and you can pay a flat fee on a monthly basis for that software as a service. And then we've also done a commission type structure where it's just a percentage of sale and you don't pay anything unless there's a significant amount of sales that end up going through the system. And then we've also kind of done a balancing act between that too. So finding different ways that you can hopefully have a CapEx and OpEx model that's very beneficial to your business. If you want to go to the next slide. So looking at kind of the overall ecosystem of what Bytemark has offered and what we're doing within the marketplace, you have feature phones, which we can do SMS ticketing. That was actually just touched on a little bit ago, where you can actually have a code that comes onto the phone, and it's just numbers and letters that can actually be scanned by a scanner that normally would do like a 2D barcode scan. It's an optical character recognition scanner, and it's able to recognize the text message that was sent over to that user. Now, what's interesting to that is, even though within the Indian market you have a lot more smartphone users that have continued to increase their usage, not everybody has a data plan, and data plans are still relatively expensive for a lot of people. So having an SMS-based ticket actually allows people that may not have a data plan or want to minimize the data plan usage to being able to use their smartphone still for being able to make purchases and being able to then scan into the system. We also offer the journey planner, which I had touched on a little bit ago, being able to do multimodal journey planning and then telling you what ticket you need or what fare you need for your solution. We also work with a number of different stationary validator providers. So we've worked with Thales and Capsch and Init, some different companies that you may be familiar with. I think Thales is probably the most prominent here within the Indian market, to be able to do validation of the ticket solutions themselves. Vehicle management system. So you might have different vehicles that are running different routes, and you have different fares depending on the routes that the vehicles are running. Being able to tie that back then to making sure that the person with their phone is actually presenting valid fare, and it's just an automated system, so integrating with the vehicle management system. And then having handheld-based electronic ticket management machine systems. So with that, you basically have your own Android device or iOS device that you can scan and validate users' tickets and make sure that they do have valid fare. We also have it where you can issue the ticket to in the exact same device. So similar to you have onboard sales, you have the capability within that exact same device to be able to do onboard sales and onboard validation. And then, of course, having the smartphone as your mobile ticketing platform. Next slide. So here's some visual representations of what our ticket solution has looked like in various different use cases. With the visual solution, you have an animation that actually goes across the screen, and it tells you what type of ticket. A fairly simplistic approach in that it just tells you have one adult, one-way ticket for the system. At the top of it, it says Pearson to Union, so that's Pearson Airport in Toronto to Union Station. Just giving you the ability, if you're going through and doing a spot check, that yes, that person has a valid ticket. You can modify the colors, you can modify how that image is interacted with. Essentially what that user is asked to do is tap on the screen so you know that it's not a video that somebody recorded beforehand. So there's some level of interaction that's happening with that app, but that you have a customized visual image that inspector is actually going to be looking for. And then you have a time stamp down at the bottom too that you can see in order to indicate when it expires, when it might have been issued, what the value of the ticket is. So just providing some additional information there. On the 2D barcode, being able to have a one-time use 2D barcode, so that 2D barcode is actually being updated all the time. It has a timestamp that's actually built into it, so when you're actually validating it, it's looking for the timestamp that's built into that 2D barcode to make sure that somebody doesn't do a screenshot and try to share it with all of their friends and then have multiple people try to scan in with the exact same ticket. So that's a level of security that exists, that the ticket is constantly changing on the mobile device based on the time that's on the phone, and that time needs to then correspond with the device that's validating the mobile ticket. We've done contactless solutions, which have included both Bluetooth and NFC. As was talked about a little bit ago too, NFC is a little bit challenging because it's not as universal. The standards between different devices is not universal. There are challenges also because the radio wire is in different locations on the different devices, so knowing kind of where to tap and how to tap it on the system can be challenging for different users. So we've definitely seen some different issues with NFC. It's something that we're still very interested in and continue to work and develop on. But from a user experience, we've definitely run into a number of different challenges. Bluetooth, we continue to see a lot of interest in that. We've actually done a hands-free solution where people can walk through a gate without even having to take their phone out of their pocket. With the British government, they actually provided us with a grant in order to be able to demonstrate this in London. Had a great deal of success with this and actually working with a couple of different systems to now deploy this into real-world scenarios so people can be able to try out. And then just in terms of the transformation, this is